Yeah, okay, so welcome back to another TCE Talks. I just recorded the previous video and immediately thought of things that I really wanted to talk about, so I'll do that after my fantastic introduction. Okay, so I thought of a few things that are really worth discussing. One of the things with playing on really small mouthpieces all the time is that I sometimes feel like I lose all the advantage of using a small mouthpiece. Now, it's not really true. Okay, so this is kind of a non-topic, but this is all about the psychology of trumpet playing, I suppose, in that I think that a lot of people will pick up a small mouthpiece and say that they can play. Maybe it's a 10.5C or something like that. So it's not got a shallow cup, but it's got a smaller internal diameter. And they go, oh yeah, I'm finding it a little easier to play the high notes. This is great. But then over time they acclimatize to that equipment, and you think that ease of playing goes away. Because what will happen is that your technique, you will become more efficient as a player. You're using this smaller mouthpiece, and so you start using less air because you have to. And then over time, all of your old issues come back. Now, this is why you have to tie in sort of embouchure and technique development alongside the change of equipment. You can't just buy a smaller mouthpiece and become a better player, even if you're switching. Excuse me, I got quite annoying. Even if you're just switching to something smaller and you get some advantage over time, if you don't change your approach to playing, you're still going to be the same player. You're just using different equipment. And I think that this is the trap that so many people fall into. It's, you have that Goldilocks effect of buying a new mouthpiece the same as your old mouthpiece, but for some reason you can play on it better. And then a month down the line, you're just the same as you were before. You sound the same. You've got the same issues. And that's because you haven't taken it upon yourself to develop your chops. Which is what I'm about. I switched to the small mouthpiece to force me to play properly, but I still have to play properly, and so that's a really big part of it. Is that is that you can't just change your mouthpiece and be a better player. That's what I was saying. Anyway, I think that what I was kind of saying before about it being it's not a thing. I can't remember what it was I said, but it's not a thing where you can just where you lose the advantages of the smaller equipment. What actually happens is you just get used to things being easier, and so you can sometimes end up going in the wrong direction in terms of you start using less effort to play, but because you're not trying so hard, you start cracking the notes and things, and so. This is the thing, is that having spent 10 years playing on tiny mouthpieces, I sometimes think that I've lost the advantage of doing so. And obviously, playing on a small mouthpiece comes with its own challenges. You do have to be a much more accurate player because the slots are smaller, and the point of resonance within that you can create with this small amount of space is a finer. You have to be more accurate. Sorry, just repeating myself a little bit there. In order to play with a resonant sound, you need to be more accurate. You must play in pitch center. And again, these are things that will force you to be a better instrumentalist. If you can take them on. So what tends to happen is that I will go to a bigger mouthpiece and I'll be like, oh God, this is why everyone suffers so much, because playing is hard when you punish yourself with this equipment. But my God, I can play with a good sound all the time. I can just playing with a good sound is so ridiculously easy on a Bach 1.5C. Because the slots are so big. And this is the thing as well, is that actually you can take an instrument that doesn't really play in tune very well and bend everything into what kind of sounds like pitch center, because pitch center is so massive. but again, that allows you to play out of tune. So something that at first can feel like an advantage actually is a disadvantage, because that's why, when you say you've got a beginner player and they're on a Bach 7C or a cheap knockoff 7C more likely, and maybe they're learning to play up to around a G at the top of the treble clef stave, but that G, they always split that note, and that's because you get accustomed to hitting everything below pitch center. And when you get to that G, which is a naturally sharp harmonic on the trumpet, all of a sudden you just cannot, it's like, everyone knows that sound. Now, I've from a pedagogical point of view, I will say that there are obvious causes for that. Some people will tell you that it's about air support. I think that those people don't understand embouchure. I think it's actually about articulation, if I was to be honest about it, but that's not what this talk is about. But it's that thing where you get up to a note, and because your mouthpiece has allowed you to play out of tune for so long, you're never going to hit that note at a point where it resonates, because you're bending everything out of tune. Now, this is the thing, is that I always say to kids that I teach, I can hear when you're going to split a note because all the notes before it were flat. So that's the thing, it's like you get this da 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 da, and you're quarter tone out of tune before you get to the note that you're going to split. And so that's the thing that, with the TCE, is learning to play in pitch center, and it's what fixes our playing, essentially. Now, it's not unique in this respect. There are other, the James Stamp stuff is all about playing in pitch center. I think that, in many ways, when you really talked about, the elite side of trumpet playing technique, many of these people are all after the same thing. Even when someone just says, follow the sound, essentially they're saying, the quality sound comes from playing in pitch center, and it comes from being efficient, and your range comes from being efficient, and all of the same, But, we are on a sliding scale in terms of, TCE is an extreme because it tells you precisely how to play, whereas, there are others that use much more general ideas, and just, stuff that I disagree with, hoping for, you cannot imagine yourself into a better player. I'm sorry, guys. So there we go. That was one of the things. The other thing that I really wanted to mention, was that I did a lot of experimenting with mouthpieces before I came up with designs that I thought would really help players develop the TCE, and then therefore bring out my own line of mouthpieces. And there was something that I always knew straight away when I tried a new mouthpiece, is there are mouthpieces out there that I would call a double C mouthpiece. And this doesn't mean they don't all have the same properties. It doesn't mean that it has to be small. It doesn't mean it has to be shallow. It doesn't mean it has to have a small throat or a big throat. I think a lot of it is about the rim. And what I mean by that is about the two things. First of all, a good mouthpiece for playing with the technique that I use tends to be quite flat and broad. So if you take a look at this Bob Civiletti mouthpiece, that thing is quite flat, and I think that the external diameter is larger than most large mouthpieces. But that means that it supports your chops in the upper register, but more to the point, it supports your chops in a way where you can use all of the action is happening in the center without you having to tighten the corners and flatten the chin in order to encourage structural integrity of the embouchure. Your structural integrity of the embouchure comes from the contact between the wide tongue and the bottom lip. And therefore you don't need to use tension in the corners and the cheeks, and more to the point, you don't have to flatten the chin in order to get that, I'm going to use the word strength, let's just go there. So there's a lot of advantage to using a flatter, wider rim in order to encourage that. But on the other side of things, I think that the alpha angle of a mouthpiece and how that interacts with your lips does a lot in terms of not shutting you down when you breach the point where the physics of the instrument changes. Now, for the vast majority of instruments, that will be up around the note G over high C. So you've got your treble stave, there's a G at the top of it, an octave higher than that is another G. And playing that note is pretty. It's pretty easy. I shouldn't say easy, but it's perfectly doable on pretty much any mouthpiece, on pretty much any trumpet. But going even a semitone or a tone beyond that is incredibly hard work on a lot of equipment, and so. I don't think it's just a matter of playing on a small mouthpiece. There are certainly plenty of small mouthpieces out there that I just cannot slot those higher Altissimo register notes on. Whereas something like this Ingram V, there are double C's on it. All three of the mouthpieces that I make and sell, I've got double C's on, and I'm happy to use them on any kind of gig. I'd probably use the deepest one for classical playing, I should add, but I don't do an awful lot of that these days. I will be doing more of it in the coming years as it happens, but that's not the point. The point is that yes, this, where maybe it's the alpha angle, maybe it's the way that this rim, fits my face, whatever. But there are certainly plenty of small mouthpieces out there that just don't have a double C in them. I know maybe that's not, again, that's a statement that I would hear myself say and then instantly disagree. But I think that, like I said, it's to do with once you get to that altissimo register, that from the G above the staff up to double C, there needs to be something more specific that, you need to be able to unfurl the chops. You need to be able to still get the air through whilst using physical effort both here and here. And I think that what happens with a lot of mouthpieces and myself is that that I get shut down at that point. And for many years I used to try all sorts of weird and wonderful things where I had this knack where I could kind of go upstream in that register. It never really benefited my playing, and I couldn't really use it on gigs very well. Whereas now, especially with the CJ Mod mouthpiece that I recently I brought out last year, just playing those sort of Roger Ingram style octave slurs, or you could say Bobby Shoe style, because he talks about those things as well, has made those notes, much more available to me than they were in the past. I don't shy away from talking about the fact that altissimo register didn't develop immediately with me when I switched to playing in this way. I was already sort of squeezing out double C's before I got into TCE, but not well. And the funny thing is that it was a Con 27B trumpet, which was unfortunately in high pitch, and so it had a tuning thing on it so you could bring it down to low pitch, but it never really played very evenly. The note production on that horn was amazing. You could just tickle it and it would sing. I think it was made in 1929, but I used to couple that trumpet with a Jerome Callett New York solo mouthpiece, which again was the smallest mouthpiece I'd ever seen at that point in my life. And I could play the 3-octave C major scale up to double C and back. And I thought, yeah, I've got this. But that I actually lost that ability as I got better at the TCE. So I think that there was a golden point where I had found equipment that reacted well to whatever it was I was doing in my playing at the time. And I thought, it was one of the things that really made me think, yes, this TCE thing is definitely the right track. There were other abilities that I sort of miraculously just gained the ability to do lip trills and shakes and things almost immediately when I started playing with TCE. And so I knew that there was something different about it. I knew there was something really beneficial for my playing about this technique. and I got that range, but I lost it again. And then it took years of messing around and trying. I tried lots of different approaches and always kept coming back to TCE, because every time I tried something that wasn't TCE, all of my bad habits came back as well. So the overblowing, the mouthpiece pressure, the not being able to play with a good tone on a small mouthpiece. And that's another thing that me and Donovan Bankhead talked about quite a lot, is the fact that the TCE enables you to create a characteristic trumpet sound on some of the smallest mouthpieces you can buy. And I had a big thing for a while of sort of demonstrating to people that you can play with a classical tone on a tiny mouthpiece if you understand that. Well, if you have a different technique. This is the thing, is that the traditional trumpet technique doesn't allow for using certain equipment and creating a decent sound. And it's all to do with the stretching of the top lip, the thinning of the tissue, the pinning the mouth, the pinning the lips open, and the flat chin, and all the effort and all that sort of thing. You cannot get enough vibrating tissue in a 3-dimensional capacity when you're playing. I can't do the traditional trumpet chops face anymore. I've got some great photos of my chops from years before I got into TCE, and they're very textbook chops, tight corners, flat chin. There it is. And yeah, it might look good, but it didn't sound good. My small mouthpiece back in 2006 was a Schilke 15B, which is pretty big. I think I could also just about play on. I had a Warburton 5MC, but I was never happy with the tone. Anyway, I talked quite a bit about tone concept in the last video, so I won't get into that again now. I think so. Where have I come with this? I was saying that I always felt that there were double C mouthpieces, and that was just ones that don't. I think that in that top fourth, at the top, in the most extreme range of notes that you'll probably never play, or need to play, or maybe in my big band we have like 2 charts that have A's in. There's one where I have a solo and I've got to play a B flat major arpeggio up to a double B flat, and then a bunch more high, like double B flats. But it's rare. It's very unusual. I played for 25 years before I ever saw an A written in a score. And I've done a lot of playing. Don't get me wrong. So this is the thing: is that maybe you'll never need those notes, but maybe if they are your goal, if you want to make that G easier, then playing higher than G is a big part of that. Anyway, there was a bit of a ramble. Sorry, I've lost it again. There was a third point. It's escaped me, so I'll stop talking now. Give me a second. I'm going to pause the recording and see if I can't remember it. Okay, no, I sort of sat here for a while and thought about the various things I've talked about in the last 2 videos, and I cannot remember what the other thing I was going to mention was. So it will come back. Let's not worry about it too much. And when I talk about these things, it always helps me to remember stuff. So thank you for watching, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye for now.